Hello, beautiful. Welcome back. Today's episode will be focused on Uranus moving into Gemini, which will take place on April 25th of 2026 and extend all the way until May 22nd of 2033. So we've got a long time to work with this transit. And I will talk about the archetypes of Gemini, of Uranus, as well as how to work with this transit and what you can expect. I'm Jamie Ehrenberg with Idlewild Retreats, and this is my journey of following my intuition and becoming my truest self. Uranus moving into Gemini will, I believe, really help our souls evolve into becoming more of our truest self. And it'll depend on where in your birth chart Gemini is. And so we'll get to that later on in the episode. But you already probably have a sense of something that's shifting in you, a specific part of your life, or maybe even your identity if your sun is in Gemini, that will that you've already been feeling this because we've already had an experience with Uranus and Gemini last year. So our first taste of Uranus in Gemini was July 7th to November 7th of 2025. And I will give some more explanations later of how I was feeling that myself. But you've already gotten a taste and a preview of what this might mean for you. So whether you already know about that part of your birth chart or you intuitively or just in lived experience know that things are shifting in a certain part of your life. What I love about astrology is not that it's predictive, and especially when it's something like Uranus, which is a planet of sudden change and innovation and freedom and shifts. It is being able to work with these energies to meet the shifts head on, or at least consciously, so that we can continue to walk more of our full true selves, our soul path as we move through this life in this human experience. So that's why I love astrology. And when we talk about Uranus, I just want to first name that it is a outer planet, which means that it is representative of the collective, so for humanity as a whole. So these themes I'm going to name, we're going to be experiencing them on a massively collective level as well as a personal level. But also it is a slow moving planet. So I already talked about the dates of, and I'm going to make sure I get this right, and I did April 25th of this year all the way to May 22nd of 2033 is how long we're going to see Uranus in Gemini. So it's going to be a long time. We're going to have a long time to work with this. This is not the only outer planet and not the only outer planet that has made a shift in recent past, and so I'm just going to name those two, and so you get a sense of how big all of this is in terms of astrological significance, to see all of these collective planets changing, these outer planets changing. So Pluto moved into Aquarius, and it finally moved in January 2024. Then we had the Neptune into Aries shift, which happened earlier this year in January of 2026. And now the last of the outer planets, Uranus, moving into Gemini, is happening this month. And we're going to be experiencing all of these for a long time. And in fact, Uranus will be the shortest planet in that transit. So that's an 8-year transit. Neptune is a 13-year transit. And Pluto is a 20-year transit. So we can really get a sense of like how big these shifts are, and they're slow. So we have a lot of time to work with them, depending on how things show up in our own individual birth charts. And yet, even though it's slow, Uranus is a disruptor. It is rebellion. It is innovation. It is quick insights. It's going to innovate in terms of like new inventions. It's going to spur action. And we're really going to see a lot of quick shifts. And again, instead of being nervous about that or maybe uncomfortable about that, thinking about like, oh, okay, where do I want to make a shift? And where can I say, wow, I don't know how I'm going to get there, but this is where I want to get to. It could be in your career. It could be in your love life. It could be in your where you live in the world. But having this big goal and just kind of orienting yourself there, and without trying to necessarily work with it constantly, being able to just point your ship towards that goal and be open to the universe, to God, to help you get there, if it's truly what your soul's meant to experience in this lifetime or just in these next 7 years. Gemini, on the other hand, is an air sign. It is the sign of the mind. It is sign of duality. And so being able to hold either or and come to the middle and understand that this middle point exists. It's not just these constant opposites of black and white, but like that in reality, most things are quite gray. But being able to hold the point of view of both sides. It is learning and education, communication, transportation, and trade. And it's really this. It is a mental sign. It is a sign of the mind and openness and curiosity, which kind of plays into that duality. And so when we put together innovation, Uranus is also technology, innovation, technology, sudden changes, and we talk about education and learning and the mind, as well as travel and trade, we could have these really big shifts in the way we live over the next 7 years. And in fact, we will see them. We've already been seeing such dramatic shifts with technology, which only keeps speeding up. And one of the things that Gemini offers us is then the opposition, and the often bringing in the opposition, and then Uranus with the rebellion of like, okay, yes, technology is speeding up, and just it has been, since the 1970s, just continually increasing it in its rapid rate of expansion and development. But we have a lot of conversations about AI and being able to exist almost in an online virtual world. And there's a lot of young people in the world that is kind of their reality. They meet with their friends all online. They have it, and everything is happening within the confines of their bedroom, as opposed to being in real life with people, as opposed to being in community and outside in the world. And that is what I think that Uranus and Gemini is going to offer us, is this radical shift to being back in person, be back on the land, be back outside of, while alternate realities or virtual realities will both exist, will also be called to be in person in real time at the same time. And so it's not an either or, but it's both. And that's what Gemini really likes to bring in for us. It's how do we work with both things? How do we work with the fullness of what is possible, as opposed to this is right, this is wrong? But it's like, oh, okay, so can I use all of this technology to make my work life so much easier, and I don't need to do all the hard, grueling work, so that I can truly be more and just be more of myself and be with people more? Is it possible to use both of these things that seem like they're opposites, but to make a different reality? So that's part of how we will be working with this. So for our own individual charts, I want to have you look at what house in your birth chart that Gemini is. So for me, for example, Gemini starts in my 10th house of career, legacy, vocation, and then it shifts into my 11th house. And if you use whole sign houses, you won't have to worry about this. You can just look at the number of the house that you're working in for this entire transit. But for some of you, it's going to be straddling like mine. And so I have been working on, and this is not surprising, this big career shift, this big legacy shift. We purchased the land that we steward during the Taurus and Gemini phase. I shifted careers. I really started embracing all of my gifts and their fullness during this phase. And so I have been able to see in my gifts and how I serve in the world during that Taurus part, which was in my 10th house. But I will have only 4 degrees of Uranus in Gemini in my 10th house, and then it switches into my 11th house of friendships and community and partnership. And so I love that shift is going to happen, because that'll even be something, a different shift to be aware of. And that's one of the things about outer planets, is they are often subtle. Even though Uranus isn't subtle at all, we will be able to look at the nuance of how these shifts feel. So for me, I have the shift of Taurus to Gemini, of Uranus moving in the same house. I'm getting to play with that. And I mentioned already that we have experienced Uranus and Gemini already. That was July 7th to November 7th of 2025. And for me, this is when all of my psychic gifts, my more metaphysical, intuitive sort of, gifts really showed up online, which is very Gemini as well. And how that is showing up in terms of my career and vocation is how I'm actually utilizing that. So just as an example of Gemini in the mind, could be travel, it could be trade, it could be education for you, or learning, being a new way of doing things, a new way of existing. And then depending on what house in your chart that looks like. But yeah, I mean, you've heard me. I mean, the opening up to more galactic and cosmic consciousness happened to me during this transit already. And so I can't even imagine what else is coming up. And it is really showing up in how I lead these videos. Even, I've been doing a lot of the 5 tips. The tips are actually coming from my guides, and so it is showing up in my everyday life. And I won't say that just in terms of Uranus, I want to honor that there's some, when we're being rebellious, or we're innovative, or doing something that we haven't done before, it can be weird and strange. When that first started coming through for me, the channeling of more cosmic energy, because I've been talking to Mother Earth and I've been hearing the land for a long time. But when that came through, I was like, what is this? Why me? What is this all about? But that might feel like that for you too. So it could be that something's for you and you're still not sure about it, because it is different. And that is something that Gemini invites in, is curiosity of like, whoa, what can this bring to me? Where can this lead me? It can be really something that we work with and consciously work with to see where it might lead. So looking at the area of your life that Gemini is, what house you're in, can be a really great way of figuring out, like, where might I set a goal? Like I said earlier, a big goal for myself that seems wild and almost out there. But if I, say like, okay, so I'm going to be moving into my 11th house of community and friendships and collaborations. What if I say, some of you know that there's 260 acres right next to Idlewild that is timber property right now. And Christian and I, since the beginning, have really been interested in purchasing that land as well, to be able to not only protect it and protect habitat and keep it from being developed really broadly, but also it'd be amazing if we could have a community pop up there. And not I say pop up, but like develop an intentional community develop there as well, with trails and maybe 5 to 10 acre parcels where individuals are building houses that are going to be where they live forever and in community with us. And so that we have all together this large swath of land that's interconnected. That is a big goal. I have no idea, where we would even come up with the money to purchase those 260 acres, but I'm going to say it out loud. And thanks for witnessing that. I would love to see that happen during this Uranus and Gemini transit. It gives us 7 years to not only, I guess, purchase, but also really be able to bring the community together who would be inhabiting that and developing the land. So when I say that, that's also the big goal, and that's one of the ways to work with this transit. But because it's so quick and there's so much change, being able to have small micro goals within that is also going to be important. So with that said, one of my astrologers that I follow, Kelly Surtees, talks about, because we're in this Gemini, air, and Uranus rapid change kind of time, even if we have those big goals, they aren't necessarily supposed to be goals that are plotted out all along the way so that we have a plan from here to that big goal of stewarding, developing, even finding the community of that new piece of land all at once. It is really shorter increments of 3 to 6 month time frames that we're working with, because we are paying attention to what has changed in those times or in that time, but working towards that goal, even lightly. And it's not a heavy-handed, it's not like Saturn where we're really trying hard to get from here to there. It is how do I move towards this with my intention and attention and moving towards that, but without having to have a rigid plan that is locking me into how to get from here to there over that time. This all said, you can see that a lot of things are going to be happening quickly. We for sure felt this last summer, where we had Pluto, Neptune, and Uranus all in their current signs, where so much information was coming in and it was almost hard to focus and concentrate. So that is going to be a big part of what we're individually going to need to do to stay embodied and grounded during this time, really over the next 7 years, is finding those tools and ways to work that allow us to slow down, connect with our breath, put our feet on the land, be able to touch a tree, be able to move and be in our bodies, truly, and out of our minds. It's going to be so important to not be carried away and even go too fast. I had the whole episode that I'll link below about how to work with this fire energy. All of those things will really come into play for this transit as well. And so I'm offering breath and intentional breath, being out in nature and on land. We do have our spring retreat still coming up here. We're going to be getting into this transit even more deeply on a personal chart level while we're together and being supported and grounded on the land at the end of this month in April. So if you're interested in being together in person, which is part of that antidote to all of this quickness and all of this air, is actually being together in community and intentionally in connecting in person, and doing that with intention, and not having our phones on the whole time. Being able to just be present is going to be a big part of not only the balance of all of this rapid development, but also the balance in our own bodies. So it is super beautiful, this Gemini duality of okay, how do we hold again this advancement in technology, but also slow down, be in person, be together, maybe be in nature together, but being able to hold both of those as being reality and important and valid parts of reality. And it doesn't even have to be either or, but it can be all these myriad of opportunities to be able to experience that. And the last recommendation that I have, so besides working with breath, being connected to land and each other intentionally in person, is being open and curious around what's coming forward. And even if it's not something we're used to, that's probably exactly what we're supposed to be open and curious about. That's the thing about Uranus, it's not the usual. So if we are talking about your sun sign, so your identity, or we're talking about your rising sign, which is your first house, which will also be your external identity, and how people experience you out in the world, when something comes up that feels really different, it might be worth exploring to see how that can play into this new version of you that's coming online and being developed, and being open and curious to the potential, even though it might not seem comfortable or like what you're used to, because that's exactly what Uranus is about. It's like changing what we're traditionally associating with, what we've traditionally done. And so it could be that we're in our 20s and this is a new spark of like a new 7 years of exploration, or it could be that we're in midlife and we're really going to be shifting something that we've done for years and years. So it's going to be a fun opportunity, I think. I also will say that our next video, so for next week's video, I will do an embodied grounding practice with us so that we are able to really do some more of that intentional connection with our breath and our bodies to balance what this transit's bringing through. So it'll be a how to provide that balance in that video next week. Again, if you're interested in the retreat, just go ahead and check out the links below. I also am now doing intuitive soul readings called private attunements, and I'll link that below as well. This is a way for you to even get an idea of what that 3 to 6 month soul purpose might be, as part of what we do during those soul readings. And it might help you stay focused as we move towards this new and potentially radically different version of you. I'm sending you a lot of love. Thank you so much for being here, and thanks for liking and subscribing and sharing this video as feels appropriate. See you next time.